Don't drink that. The voice came not as a scream or a plea, but a measured whisper sharp as broken glass. Caleb King froze mid-movement. The crystal glass of Cabernet Sauvignon hovered near his lips, catching the reflection of chandeliers above. All around him, laughter rippled like polite thunder. The room gleamed with old money, new influence, and calculated ambition. The Hamptons estate, his estate, was hosting its most important gathering in over a decade. The merger announcement of King Nova's leadership, a legacy Caleb had built from nothing, now on the verge of being handed over to the man standing just 15 feet away, Marcus Hale. Marcus lifted his champagne flute in Caleb's direction, a proud smile playing on his face. The cameras loved him stylish, silver-haired, confident, but Caleb didn't smile back. He turned slightly, enough to glimpse the source of the whisper. A young black woman in a crisp maid's uniform stood near the corner pillar. She held a tray against her waist, but her gaze was steady and strangely calm. She didn't move toward him. She didn't repeat herself. But something in her eyes made the room's warmth curdle in Caleb's chest. He lowered the glass. "Sir?" came the soft voice of his assistant, Bennett, standing nearby. "Is everything all right?" Caleb handed him the untouched wine. "Take this to the kitchen, quietly, no questions." Bennett blinked, confused, but obeyed. Maya William exhaled softly from across the room. 20 minutes later, Caleb stepped into the dim corridor behind the main dining hall, where staff exited with trays and whispers. He wasn't supposed to be here, not in a tailored suit that cost more than the hallway tiles. But he found her, the maid. She was wiping a tray with a cloth, methodically, as if nothing had happened. "You warned me," he said. She didn't flinch. "I'm Caleb King. I know who you are," she said without looking up. He hesitated. "That drink, was there really something in it?" "Yes." "Why?" "You should be asking your friend," she said, her voice cool and composed. "Not me." His jaw tightened. "You saw him?" "I saw enough. And I heard more. I clean tables, not secrets. But I hear them anyway." She finally looked up. "I'm not trying to be a hero, Mr. King. I just hate seeing someone walk into a trap they didn't set." He stared at her. She couldn't be older than 27. Her eyes held no fear, but they carried something heavier than defiance, conviction. "What's your name?" "Maya," she said simply. "Maya William. I want to talk more. When your shift ends. I don't take meetings. I mop floors." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then I'll wait by the mop closet." She didn't smile, but she didn't refuse. Back in the main hall, Marcus approached him with 2 reporters in tow. "There he is," Marcus laughed. "We were just telling them about the new leadership vision. You ready to toast this thing?" Caleb looked at the man he once called his brother. Every instinct in him said to smile, to nod, to play the part. But behind Marcus's grin was the faint sheen of sweat, and behind his polished cufflinks, Caleb suddenly saw poison. Not in a vial, not in a glass, but in intention. "Not yet," Caleb said smoothly. "Let's save the best for the board meeting tomorrow morning." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You sure you'll make it? You've looked tired all week." Caleb held his gaze. "I'll be there, sharp, clear-headed." The reporters excused themselves politely. Marcus leaned closer. "You good, man?" Caleb gave a faint smile. "I've never been better." That night, long after the guests had gone, Caleb stood by the open kitchen, a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. His private security team had confirmed. The wine glass had been tampered with traces of a sedative, mild but fast, acting, enough to disorient, enough to black out memory for a few hours. Accidental contamination, the kitchen manager had claimed. But Caleb wasn't a fool. Not anymore. He opened his phone and pulled up the company calendar. 8 a.m. King Nova board meeting. Ratify merger structure. He stared at the line. If he'd drunk the wine, if he'd woken up disoriented in that hotel suite Marcus had gifted him near Central Park, and that womanese, the one Marcus had introduced to him last month at that gallery event, the one who had slipped her number into Caleb's jacket. He saw it now. All of it. They would have found him asleep, or worse, with photos, with witnesses, scandal, humiliation, a reason to step down, and Marcus would step in. But someone had whispered, someone no one else saw. Just before midnight, Caleb returned to the hallway near the staff exit. The cleaning cart sat alone. The mop leaned quietly against the wall. But she was there, Maya Williams, seated on the supply bench, changing her shoes. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said. "I wasn't sure you were real," he replied. She smiled. "Just barely." He sat across from her. "Why'd you warn me?" "Because power blinds people. And sometimes it's the ones in the shadows who see best." Caleb looked at her. "You could have stayed silent. You risked everything." Maya looked away. "I've already lost everything once." He said nothing. If Maya's quiet courage moved you, give her a like. She didn't ask for credit. She didn't ask for thanks. But sometimes, the ones who see in silence deserve to be seen the most. And don't forget to comment where you're watching this from. You might not know it, but someone nearby is watching too, and feeling the same. She stood. "I don't need your thanks, Mr. King. Just, don't drink anything tomorrow either." She walked off, and Caleb, billionaire of King Nova, watched a woman with no title, no platform, no armor walk away with more integrity than any board member he knew. He didn't know it yet, but that whisper in the banquet hall would be the first crack in an empire built on trust. And trust, he was about to learn, was the most fragile currency of all. At 6:43 a.m., Caleb King stood alone in his private study, the pale morning light bleeding through the sheer curtains. He hadn't slept. His reflection in the window showed a man older than the night before, his face taut, eyes rimmed with quiet fire. On the desk lay the board documents for the 8 a.m. meeting, where the transition of leadership was supposed to be ratified. But now he knew. This wasn't transition, it was hijack, and it had started long before last night's drink. He poured himself black coffee, left it untouched, then opened the top drawer and pulled out a small, sleek recorderone he'd started using years ago to document private thoughts when he was building King Nova from the ground up. It hadn't been used in years, but this wasn't a year like any other. He clicked it on. The 14th of March. Internal breach suspected. Marcus Hale, formerly best friend, currently Kume, be involved in coordinated attempt to remove me from power. Motive, control of merger. Means, sedative drug planted last night. Evidence, preliminary chemical analysis confirms manipulation. Witness, Maya Williams, staff cleaner. He paused. Personnel note, I can't believe it, but I believe her. Caleb shut off the device and slipped it into his coat pocket. By 7:25 a.m., the glass-paneled executive boardroom on the 42nd floor of King Nova headquarters shimmered with morning gloss. Men and women in tailored suits shuffled through handouts. Marcus Hale stood by the large monitor, charismatic as always, cracking light jokes with the CFO. The agenda had been printed days earlier, Caleb King stepping down as primary CEO and shifting to an emeritus advisory role. Marcus stepping in as interim CEO until the final quarter. Everything had been timed with surgical precision, but the door hadn't opened. At 7:55 a.m., murmurs began. Marcus checked his Rolex, smiled calmly. He probably got stuck in traffic. I told him to rest. At 7:58 a.m., the door swung open. Caleb King entered, wearing a navy blue suit, no tie, eyes razor sharp. The room shifted. Quietly, respectfully, uneasily, Caleb walked to the head of the table, took his seat, and opened his leather folio. I hope I didn't keep anyone waiting, he said evenly. Marcus offered a half chuckle. Not at all. We were just warming up. Good, Caleb said. Then let's make this morning count. He clicked his pen, and the room fell still. That afternoon, Caleb sat in his corner office staring at the security footage his tech team had pulled for him. The feed showed a bartender subcontracted through the catering vendor slipping something into a wine glass. A woman in a blue dress walked past, whispered something. He zoomed in. It was Maya. She had seen it, that moment, and she had acted. The bartender had already disappeared. False name, prepaid phone, no clear trace. But the woman Maya described the one Marcus had introduced at the gallery last month. Her name was Harper Lane. She had supposedly worked in PR in LA, but her LinkedIn profile was less than 6 weeks old. And her email? Registered on a domain Marcus personally owned. Caleb felt cold ripple down his spine. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was orchestration. He pressed intercom. Bennett, have Maya Williams brought here immediately. There was a long pause. Sir, she left this morning. Didn't clock in. No contact info on file. Caleb clenched his jaw. Find her. That evening, Caleb walked the back corridors of the staff level in the Hamptons estate. He knew she wouldn't be there, but he needed to retrace it. The moment. The whisper. The girl with no title who saw what others didn't. He paused by the supply closet where she'd sat the night before. There, taped to the inside of the cart, was a napkin, folded. In tiny script, it read, I don't stay long, but I stay long enough to matter. Trust is a two-way door. Don't lock yours. He stood still, holding the napkin. No signature, no number. Just like that, she was gone again. The following day, Caleb called an emergency internal audit meeting. Behind closed doors, he questioned department heads about PR spending, Harper Lane's consulting fees, access logs to signature databases, the financial trail of travel vouchers tied to Marcus's account. Quietly, methodically, he began reconstructing the path of deception. But Marcus wasn't stupid. He knocked lightly and walked into Caleb's office without invitation. You've been off, Marcus said. I've known you a long time, Caleb. I know when you're circling something. Caleb looked up. I'm tired. That's not the same thing as being blind. No, Caleb replied. But sometimes being tired helps you see the things you've been pretending not to. Marcus pulled up a chair, sitting across from him. You know, Marcus began, we've built something incredible. 30 years. From your garage in Queens to this tower, and I've never once let you fall. You sure about that? I'm sure, Marcus said calmly. That's why I'm saying you need to stop digging. You're going to tear apart your own legacy trying to protect it. Caleb's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened. And if I already know what's beneath the surface, then you'll be doing more damage than I ever could. The two men stared at each other. No raised voices, just the kind of silence that comes when a friendship has already died, but neither is willing to say the time of death aloud. Marcus stood. You want to take me down? Fine, but be ready to lose the people who still believe in you. Caleb watched him walk out. Then he whispered, to no one. They never believed in me. They believed in the version of me you polished. That night, alone again in his study, Caleb retrieved a secured drive from a hidden drawer. He opened it and uploaded the full digital footage Maya had helped identify. The bartender's move, Harper's prepositioned room reservation, even a clipped recording from Maya's phone where Marcus's voice said, once he's out for the night, I'll take care of the press. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Caleb sat back in the leather chair, fingers steepled. He could make it public. He could destroy Marcus now. But the board would split. The media would spin. And Maya, she was the only witness with nothing to gain. And that made her the most powerful voice of all. He needed her, not just to prove the truth, but to remind him how to tell it. Because once you whisper the truth, there's no turning down the volume again. Somewhere across the city, in a borrowed basement apartment above a bodega in Queens, Maya William removed her apron and dropped it into a trash bag. She had no job now, no last paycheck, but she had her hands. And her memory. She stared at the ceiling, remembering Caleb's face the moment he set down the wine glass. That flicker, that doubt, that trust. It wasn't much, but sometimes that was how revolutions started. With a whisper, and one man who listened. The next morning, just past 9 a.m., Caleb King stood in the center of King Nova's executive archive room, rows of dark servers blinking silently around him like quiet witnesses. The chilled air made him pull his suit jacket tighter. Beside him stood Bennett, his personal assistant of 8 years, clutching a file with fingers just slightly too tense. You're sure this is everything? Caleb asked without turning. Yes, sir. Every signature authorization, digital trace, IP log from the past 4 months. We pulled the secure access list too, just as you requested. Caleb nodded. And her name? Anything on Maya William? Bennett hesitated. That's where it gets strange. Caleb turned, his eyes narrowed. She's in the staffing logs, Bennett continued, flipping through papers. Hired through an outsourced hospitality agency. No social security number listed. No W-2. Just a badge entry and a shift schedule. She clocked in 4 times over the past 2 weeks. Then gone. Gone as in? As in like she was never really here. Caleb walked slowly to the nearest desk, set down the folder, and leaned both hands on the table. I want that agency's entire employee record. Who referred her? Who signed off? I want the name of the person who let her walk in with a mop and a memory sharp enough to save a life. Bennett nodded quickly and turned to leave. Caleb added, "And Bennett." He paused. "Be discreet. We don't know who else might be watching." Across town, Maya William was sipping coffee from a paper cup, seated at the corner of a quiet bus terminal in Brooklyn. Her backpack rested by her foot, zipper half open, revealing an old cracked tablet and a small worn notebook. She glanced around cautiously before flipping open a newspaper folded to the real estate classifieds. Not because she needed an apartment, she was checking the dates, timelines, proof that today was today, and she was still here, still real. A man sat down beside her without a word. She didn't look up. "I was told you're hard to find," he said, casually pulling a sandwich from a foil wrapper. "Turns out, you're just deliberate." She still didn't meet his gaze. "Who told you to find me?" "Your old friend from Internal Affairs." That made her look. "Keith?" The man smiled. "He says hi, and that he still owes you a pack of spearmint gum." Maya exhaled. "That idiot. He's worried about you." "He shouldn't be. I know how to disappear." The man nodded. "And yet, you didn't. You warned someone. You stayed." Maya took another sip of coffee. "I didn't stay for him. I stayed for the truth." He looked at her. "You know that's what makes you dangerous, right?" She finally smiled, thin but genuine. "I've been dangerous since the day I stopped being useful." He leaned closer. "Caleb King wants to see you." Her smile vanished. "That's a bad idea." He said it's not about gratitude. It's about clarity. He's building a case, and he thinks you're the only one who knows how to spot the missing pieces. Maya looked out across the terminal. "And what if I don't want to help another rich man clean up his empire?" The man shrugged. "Then don't. Help yourself. Help the next girl who'll walk into a boardroom and not be believed. Or help the truth, if nothing else." Maya stood up. "Where?" Caleb didn't expect her to walk through the service door of his Park Avenue penthouse at 3:37 p.m., but she did. Same jacket, same steady eyes, same silence. She didn't sit when he offered a chair. She stood near the window, arms crossed. "You shouldn't have tried to find me," she said. "You saved my life," he replied. That tends to make a man persistent. "I didn't save your life. I interrupted someone else's story." "Then interrupt mine again," Caleb said, walking to the table. "I've gathered proof. Half a puzzle. You saw something that Night-heard something. Maybe more." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm your missing piece? I think you're the only one who doesn't owe anyone in this city." That made her pause. "I need help identifying the full structure of what Marcus built behind my back. Accounts, IP diversions, signature forgeries. There's something bigger than just one failed sabotage attempt." Maya stepped forward. "Do you have building access logs?" "Yes." "Remote device connections?" "Logged and archived." She nodded. "Then you don't need a witness. You need a strategist." Caleb said nothing, just waited. Finally, she said, "I want one thing." "Name it." When this is over, I don't go on a podium. I don't shake hands with your board. I disappear." Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Agreed." They worked through the night. Maya's fingers moved quickly over a keyboard borrowed from Caleb's personal tech lab. She read logs like sheet music, skipping from line to line with uncanny ease. Caleb watched her, not just her skill, but her calm. She wasn't guessing. She was remembering. He had seen this before in only one other person, a military intelligence officer who once briefed him during a cybersecurity grant. That officer had a badge. Maya had none, but the precision was identical. By 2:17 a.m., they had isolated two major breaches, both routed through a temporary server in the PR department, traced back to a side branch of Harper Lane's email activity. It wasn't just about drugging Caleb or staging a scandal. It was about a financial redirection, $48 million in silent share transfers, executed in his name over 4 months. "He was preparing to take everything," Caleb murmured. "Not just my job, the company, the legacy." Maya nodded. "And if you'd blacked out, woke up in that suite with her, and it went public, you'd have been asked to step down voluntarily. He wouldn't have needed a vote. Caleb leaned back, staring at the screen. You ever worked in intelligence? I used to work in corporate risk for a law firm, Maya replied quietly. Then I said something I wasn't supposed to, about a senior partner. Next thing I knew, my file was corrupted, my emails wiped, and my badge access revoked. He looked at her. And no one fought for you? She gave a tight smile. No one remembered me. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then maybe, he said, it's time someone did. At 7:45 a.m., as dawn broke over Manhattan, Caleb stood beside Maya in the foyer of his building. She had already picked up her bag. The deal had been clear. But just before she walked out, he said, one more thing. She turned. I need you in the room. When we confront him. I said no public exposure. You won't speak. You won't be seen. But I want him to know you were watching. That someone always was. Maya studied him. And then, slowly, she nodded. Not because she needed revenge, but because the man she had once interrupted now understood what it meant to never be seen at all. And that, for her, was enough. The conference room on the 49th floor of King Nova's Manhattan Tower was bathed in morning light, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. The table was long, sleek, and custom-made from African wenge wood. 12 leather chairs surrounded it, occupied now by the most powerful people in the company: chief officers, founding partners, and 2 legal advisors. But all eyes were on Marcus Hale as he stood near the head of the table, gesturing confidently with a digital pointer, the screen behind him flashing charts and projections. We need to act quickly, Marcus said, voice smooth. Given the recent fluctuation in shareholder confidence, a temporary transition of leadership may be the stabilizing signal the market needs. Caleb is recovering that needs time, and we need control. The words, temporary transition, rang like a bell in Caleb's ears, but he didn't move. Not yet. He stood at the back of the room, letting Marcus dig the hole a little deeper. Maya, unseen, sat in a small adjoining sound booth behind a mirrored glass panel. She wore a headset, listening. She didn't flinch at Marcus's words, not anymore. She had seen too many men like him rise by stepping over the unseen. This was just another boardroom game, but the stakes this time were about more than money. Harper Lane, seated near the center, shifted uncomfortably. You're suggesting a vote today, Marcus? Marcus smiled, deferential. Only a temporary designation, just to cover the next 2 quarters, for the sake of appearances. That's odd, said another voice. Caleb stepped forward now, his voice calm and cutting through the room like a quiet blade. Because I don't recall stepping down. All heads turned. Marcus blinked, just once. Caleb, no one expected you here so soon. That was the plan, wasn't it? The room went still. Caleb moved to the chair at the head of the table and slowly sat down. Let's skip the performance. I'd like to address the board. Marcus tried to interrupt, but Harper Lane lifted a hand. Let him speak. Caleb placed a small black device in the center of the table, a compact projector. With one tap, the screen behind Marcus flickered, then changed. Security footage appeared. Audio logs followed. First, it showed Marcus entering a hotel suite 2 nights prior, instructing 2 staff members, both now under investigation, to prepare a specific room. The timestamp aligned with Caleb's supposed illness. The next clip featured a muted exchange between Marcus and Harper, standing too close, whispering with glances toward Caleb's name on a printed itinerary. Then the audio played. It wasn't perfectly clear, but the words were distinguishable. Give him the drink, then leave. I'll handle the rest. Are you sure? What if he wakes up? He won't. I've done this before. The boardroom felt like it had stopped breathing. Marcus laughed, nervous, dismissive. This is absurd, fabricated. Deepfake technology can mimic. Caleb turned to Harper. Harper, are you claiming this is doctored? She froze. Her face paled. You were there. You brought the tablet. I recognized your bracelet in the footage. Same one you're wearing now. Everyone looked at Harper's wrist. The slender gold band glinted under the light. She tried to speak, but nothing came. Caleb continued, his voice unwavering. $48 million. That's how much was funneled through a dummy corporation linked to a Cayman bank. Authorized through executive-level credentials. Credentials only Marcus and I possessed. Someone gasped. But unlike Marcus, Caleb said. I have never logged into the system from a Michigan IP address. Which brings us to this. He tapped again. A final image appeared. An IP tracking map connecting Marcus's private home router to 3 unauthorized login sessions during weekends when Caleb was in California. Caleb leaned forward. You weren't just staging a scandal. You were transferring ownership. Slowly, silently. Marcus was losing color. You can't prove that was me. Anyone could have. There's more. Caleb stood, but I'll leave it for federal investigators. This meeting is simply a courtesy, because I respect this company, and I respect each of you. He looked directly at Harper. Even those who forgot how to be loyal. Silence. Then Harper stood. She began, then stopped. Her gaze dropped to the table. I have no excuse. Marcus turned to her, betrayal in his eyes. You told me you'd cover the accounts. Harper cut him off. I didn't sign up for this. I thought we were fixing a problem, not framing a man. The general counsel, an older woman named Ruth Silverman, finally spoke. Given what we've seen here, I move for an emergency suspension of Marcus Hale pending legal investigation. Seconded. Thirded. Passed unanimously. Marcus was escorted from the room by 2 security staff before the projector even powered down. His protests echoed, but no one responded. 20 minutes later, Caleb sat alone in his office, staring out the window. His coffee had gone cold. The door creaked open softly. Maya stepped in. He didn't turn. You stayed? He asked. You asked me to be in the room. Still, I didn't expect you to stick around after. She walked to his desk and placed something down. A small, neatly folded napkin. On it was scribbled a series of login timestamps and usernames, the last piece they'd found last night. You'll need this if he tries to twist the story, she said. He picked it up, then looked at her. Why did you really come back? He asked quietly. Maja hesitated. Then, without drama, she said, because it matters. What we saw, what we didn't let happen. It matters to people like me. Caleb leaned back. People like you? The ones who clean up messes they didn't make. The ones who see things but are trained not to speak. He stood. Not anymore. Their eyes met. Not romantic, not dramatic, just real. An acknowledgement of trust formed under fire. She turned to leave. You were never invisible, Maya. She paused at the door. I was, until you saw me. And then she was gone. That night, Caleb King made a call to his legal team, then one to a federal investigator. Then, finally, one more to an anonymous foundation that had once funded whistleblower protection for corporate employees. I want to start a new wing, he said. One focused on janitorial staff, food service, maintenance people no one talks to. But they see everything. Name for the initiative? The coordinator asked. Caleb smiled to himself. Call it the Watchful. Outside, New York glittered in silence. But in one hidden corner of the city, a girl who used to be invisible finally felt seen. Caleb stared at the flickering skyline from the penthouse window of the King Nova headquarters. It had been 3 days since the boardroom blow-up, and though Marcus was now under official investigation, the storm was far from over. Whispers had begun circulating in the press, anonymous leaks about a failed coup, speculation about forged footage, and questions about Caleb's sudden return. But what they didn't have, what they couldn't fake, was the truth that Maya William had handed over quietly, without fanfare. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, sleep-deprived. The walls of power had never felt so thin. Someone knocked softly. Come in, Caleb said, turning. It was Thomas Avery, his long-trusted legal advisor. The man's hair was grayer now, his gait slower, but he carried a folder with the same steady hand he always had. We have a problem, Thomas said, closing the door behind him. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Only one? This one's not internal. He laid down a series of photographs, tabloid style, grainy shots. Caleb blinking mid-step outside the hotel, 2 nights before the board meeting, escorted by hotel staff. Then a second shot of Marcus entering the same hotel 10 minutes later. And finally an out-of-focus image of a woman entering through a back door. Blonde, heavily made up, her identity unknown. They're trying to spin it, Thomas said. Rumors say you overdosed on a party drug during an affair. That Maya planted the evidence. That you staged the takedown. Caleb gave a tired sigh. So we're back to character assassination. Worse, Thomas added. Marcus's team filed a civil countersuit this morning, claiming defamation, emotional damage, and falsified evidence. Caleb laughed once, hollowly. The man tried to drug me and arrange a scandal, and now he's the victim? Thomas didn't smile. But we're not defenseless, Thomas continued. The surveillance from the service corridor clearly shows Marcus handing over a pill bottle. We've got Maya's signed statement, time, stamped logs, and most importantly the woman they tried to use. Caleb straightened. You found hair? Thomas nodded. Her name's Amber Lowell. She was approached by Marcus's assistant, promised 20 grand to escort you, and be seen leaving the suite. But she got cold feet. She's willing to testify. Caleb leaned back in his chair, processing. Good. Keep her safe. Pay for relocation if needed. Thomas hesitated. There's more. Maya's name is starting to show up in forums. Some are praising her. Others. He let the sentence hang. Caleb's voice turned sharp. They're targeting her? They're trying to. A few anonymous accounts posted fake history accusing her of theft from previous employers, even suggesting she was romantically involved with you. Caleb's jaw clenched. This isn't just about me anymore. Thomas nodded. It's about silencing witnesses. Across the city, Maya walked the quiet aisles of her neighborhood grocery store. It was strange, being out in the world after what she'd helped expose. The city buzzed as it always had, but she felt watched, more seen than she ever wanted to be. Not all attention was good. She reached for a carton of oat milk when her phone buzzed. A private number. She hesitated, then answered. Maya William? The voice asked. Yes. This is Detective Elena Morales, New York PD White Collar Crimes Unit. I've been assigned to the King Nova case. Maya's breath caught slightly. I'd like to set up a formal statement. You've already provided documents, but we need to get an official video testimony. Maya exhaled slowly. I understand. And Maya, the detective added, voice gentler now. You did the right thing. No matter what noise starts circling you, keep your footing. These men play dirty when they fall. That evening, Maya stood outside Caleb's office door, holding a flash drive. She knocked twice. He looked up as she entered, surprised. You're supposed to be resting, he said. She walked in anyway and placed the drive on his desk. This isn't about rest. It's about what comes next. Caleb picked up the drive, studying her. What's on it? Audio. From the service kitchen 2 days before the gala, Marcus was speaking with someone on a burner phone. He didn't see me. I was prepping drinks. Caleb plugged it in and played the clip. Marcus's voice filtered through, distorted by distance but unmistakable. He'll never see it coming. One tab and the man's out. Just snap a photo. We leak it. The board flips. A second voice. What about the girl? She's just a waitress. She won't talk. Caleb paused the file. You held on to this? He asked. Maya looked him dead in the eye. I wanted to be sure you'd actually do something with it. Caleb gave a slight nod. I will. Then he added, thank you. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. You should also know, someone followed me home last night. I wasn't alone, but still. Caleb stood immediately. Why didn't you say something sooner? I wasn't scared, she said softly. Not yet. Caleb reached for his desk phone. I'm assigning you protection. You're not walking anywhere alone again. Maya didn't argue. The next morning, Caleb met with a crisis PR team. They advised a televised interview, a formal statement, damage control. But Caleb had a different idea. He walked onto the floor of King Nova's central operations, a buzzing expanse of cubicles and server panel sand, asked for the internal media crew. I want to record a message, he told them. No press, no polish, just me, speaking. The video aired on the company intranet later that afternoon. Then, it leaked intentionally. In it, Caleb sat at a desk with no branding, just him and a plain background. I'm Caleb King, and I owe this company the truth, he began. He explained what had happened not with drama, but with clarity. He didn't name Maya, but he acknowledged the person who had come forward. He spoke about betrayal, about how trust, once broken, must be earned again, not demanded. The truth, he said, is not always profitable. It doesn't trend. It doesn't win votes on a board, but it will always outlive the lie. The video went viral overnight. The following day, Harper Lane resigned from the board with a letter that was equal parts apology and confession. In it, she admitted to fear, to misjudgment, and to being complicit through silence. She made a large donation to a nonprofit that supported whistleblowers. Marcus's trial date was scheduled for the fall. And Maya? She was offered a new position, head of ethics and compliance training for King Nova's staff. She declined. "I want to go back to school," she told Caleb in his office. "Criminal justice." He smiled. "You'd be a hell of a lawyer. I want to help people like me, the ones who never get listened to." He nodded. "When you're ready, your tuition's covered. That's not charity. That's justice returning the favor." She smiled faintly. "Justice doesn't always roar, Mr. King. Sometimes it just stands quietly in a room until someone listens." And he did. For the first time in years, he listened, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a man who finally understood what it meant to be truly seen. Rain drizzled softly over Manhattan as dusk crept over the skyline, washing the windows of King Nova's headquarters in glistening streaks of silver. Inside the executive conference room on the 41st floor, Caleb King stood alone, staring at a whiteboard crowded with tangled timelines, names, and scribbled arrows that connected one betrayal to the next. The storm outside mirrored the tension inside his chest. He rubbed his temple. For days now, since the broadcasted statement, things had accelerated. Marcus's lawyers went quiet, too quiet. Harper Lane's resignation, while publicly framed as redemption, had revealed deeper rot, and Maya's report of being followed still haunted him. His phone buzzed. It was Elena Morales. "Detective," he answered immediately. "We got a development," she said. "The woman involved, Amber Lowell, vanished last night. The apartment she was staying in was ransacked. No signs of forced entry, but her suitcase, burner phone, and all her witness prep materials are gone." Caleb's heart sank. "Do you think she ran? Or someone made her run?" Elena said. "We're pulling traffic cam footage and tracing nearby cell pings, but whoever did this knew what they were doing." Caleb gripped the phone tighter. "I want Maya protected round the clock." "She already is," Elena assured him. "But I need something from you too, Caleb. I need full access to Marcus's archived internal communications. That includes encrypted backups." Caleb nodded, already turning to his desk. "You'll have it within the hour." As he hung up, a quiet knock came at the door. It was Maya, dressed in a charcoal gray coat, damp at the shoulders. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said softly, noticing the phone still in his hand. "You're not interrupting," Caleb said, setting it down. "Come in, please." She walked toward him, hesitant. "I came to return something." She handed him a small spiral notebook, weathered, soft at the edges. "What's this?" he asked. "I used to jot notes between shifts," she explained. "Things I saw, things that felt off. I didn't know it would ever matter. But maybe now, maybe someone smarter than me can piece more of this together." Caleb opened it slowly. There were dates, names, initials, M.W. for Marcus Whitaker, L.K. for Lauren Keene, cryptic phrases like third file cabinet, basement hallway, and one entry that made him freeze. 4/18. Marcus asked 2 janitorial temps to deliver unmarked boxes to parking level. Security cameras looped during drop. Timing matches sudden disappearance of archive tapes. "And," he looked up, "you noticed all of this?" Maya shrugged. "I didn't know what I was noticing. I just paid attention." Caleb exhaled. "This is more valuable than any security briefing we've had in months." But Maya wasn't smiling. "I saw the news about Amber," she said. "She's gone, isn't she?" His silence said enough. "I don't scare easy," she went on. "But I also know how quickly people like me disappear when we start stepping into places we're not supposed to." You're not going anywhere," Caleb said, stepping forward. "I've already spoken with Morales. You're under protection now. Every move Marcus makes, we'll be there." She looked at him, tired but defiant. "He'll come for you next." Caleb met her eyes. "Let him." Later that night, deep in the restricted digital archives of King Nova's internal server farm, a forensic analyst named Jordan Phelps pulled up a backup log from 3 months ago. It was incomplete, interrupted mid-transfer. He clicked into the fragments and played one of the recovered audio files. "You said he'll be asleep by 10. That's the plan. You sure she'll go along with it?" "She's being paid," Not asked. Jordan leaned back in his chair. This wasn't just planning. This was conspiracy. He picked up his office phone. Mr. King, I think I've found something. By morning, the media had shifted again. An anonymous source released a redacted audio file to major news networks, matching the one Jordan discovered. It wasn't graphic, but the implications were unmistakable. Caleb issued no official statement. Instead, he let the media wheel turn. The court of public opinion would do its part. Inside the courtroom, however, things grew uglier. Marcus's legal team pivoted hard. They painted him as a scapegoat, manipulated by Caleb's ambition and Maya's supposed vendetta. They even suggested that Caleb and Maya had fabricated evidence together to secure her rise within the company. The defense's tone was slick, rehearsed, almost convincing. Until Maya walked in. She wore a navy blouse, modestly tailored slacks, and her name badge from her former uniform clipped to her belt knot out of obligation, but quiet defiance. The courtroom hushed. Her testimony was clear, measured, unwavering. She spoke not with rage, but with resolute calm. About the hallway whispers, the late-night errands, the drinks she poured, the voices she overheard, and the expressions she never forgot. Why didn't you go to HR at the time? The defense attorney pressed. Maya answered without blinking. Because HR was run by his cousin, and I'd seen what happened to the last girl who complained. She never came back. Gasps echoed softly in the room. And then came the moment Caleb had dreaded and hoped for. Were you romantically involved with Mr. King? The defense asked, narrowing his gaze. Maya's eyes darkened. No. You never had dinner? Never spent time in private? She paused, then said clearly, I poured his drinks. I cleared his glasses. That's all. If you're suggesting a woman can't be credible unless she's untouched, then maybe you're in the wrong century. The judge cleared his throat. Strike that last remark, but the jury will disregard the insinuation. Outside, the courthouse buzzed. Journalists chased headlines, but one photo went viral. Maya exiting the courtroom, surrounded by press, her head held high, her King Nova badge gleaming in the afternoon light like a medal of quiet valor. Back in the office that night, Caleb stared out his window again. He didn't speak until Thomas entered. We got word, Thomas said. The judge approved the audio as admissible. Marcus's case just cracked wide open. Caleb nodded. And Maya? She's back home. Protected. But she refused the company car. Said she'll walk. Caleb chuckled softly. Of course she did. Thomas shifted. You know, this could still get worse. Marcus won't take this lying down. I'm counting on it, Caleb replied, voice like gravel. People like him always reveal more when they're cornered. He paused, then added, get Morales everything she needs. Every file, every name, every blind spot we've let slide the last 10 years. You're ready to burn it all down? Thomas asked. No, Caleb said, finally turning to face him. I'm ready to build it back right. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the storm was far from over. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Sloan estate, casting long golden rays across the marble floors. Caleb Sloan stood in his private study, shoulders squared, eyes locked on a high-resolution security feed playing silently across 3 monitors. The images, grainy but damning, showed Maya discreetly handing him the untouched glass of wine, and Marcus slipping something into another identical one. He didn't blink, just watched. Still think I'm imagining things, he said softly, not turning. Behind him, his old friend and longtime personal assistant, Gregory Shaw, let out a slow exhale. I think you might have just dodged something lethal, Caleb, or at the very least ruinous. Caleb finally turned, his jaw tight. Not might have. I did, and it's not over. Gregory looked concerned. You still planning on going to the gala tonight? Absolutely, and Marcus will be there. So will Clarissa. Gregory hesitated. You think they'll try again? I think, Caleb said, grabbing his cufflinks from the desk. They already have. By 7 p.m., the city skyline glimmered in silver and sapphire hues, reflected in the glass walls of the Caledona luxury rooftop venue, overlooking downtown Seattle. The gala had been scheduled months in advance to honor the 10th anniversary of Sloan Dynamics' AI subsidiary, NeuroCore. But tonight, it served another purpose, one Caleb hadn't told anyone about, not even Gregory. Dressed in a sharp navy tuxedo, Caleb descended from his private car under flashing cameras and murmurs from the press. "Mr. Sloan, will Clarissa be joining you tonight?" one reporter asked. Caleb smiled coolly. "Wouldn't miss it," he said, then disappeared inside. Across the ballroom, Maya stood stiff near the catering line, dressed in a black uniform. Her name tag read, Maya, event staff. She hadn't seen Caleb since the night she warned him. No text, no message, nothing. And yet, she was here. He'd asked her employer personally to assign her to this gala. Her heart pounded as she moved between linen-draped tables, replacing empty glasses and adjusting centerpieces. Then she saw him, Caleb taller than she remembered, standing with ease among the elite, his eyes calm but searching. And then they met hers. She froze, but only for a second. His nod was almost imperceptible. A signal. "Excuse me," came a voice from behind her. Maya turned and came face to face with Clarissa Northwood Immaculate in a dark emerald gown, her blonde hair cascading like polished silk. Her smile was practiced, but her eyes? Cold. "Careful with the champagne tray," Clarissa said, brushing past her. Maya's hand trembled as she clutched the silver tray tighter. "Yes, ma'am." But in that moment, something changed. The fear that had gripped her before the dread of being invisible, replaceable, gave way to something else. Resolve. Caleb was mid-conversation with a city councilman when Gregory approached him, whispering, "Marcus just arrived." I see him," Caleb replied, watching as Marcus Hale strolled into the gala like he owned it, wrapped in tailored Armani and false confidence. Caleb didn't wait. He excused himself and headed toward the central bar. Behind it, an old friend, Tobias Rains, a private investigator disguised tonight as a bartender, waited with a small device tucked under the counter. "You've got 2 recorders live," Tobias murmured, sliding Caleb a drink. Caleb took it, but didn't drink. "And the room feed? Streaming straight to your private server. I've got Marcus mic'd from his jacket pocket. If he says anything, it's yours." Caleb nodded, scanning the room again. Clarissa now stood with Marcus, their body language intimate but not affectionate. Too close, too quiet. From across the venue, Maya noticed something off. A woman in a short red dress unfamiliar approached Clarissa and Marcus. Maya recognized her. One of the women from the reservation list. A last-minute addition, the same name Marcus had asked the manager to add earlier that week. The woman laughed too loudly at something Marcus said, her hand brushing his arm, and then Clarissa handed her a small envelope. The woman nodded discreetly and walked away toward the elevators. Maya's heart dropped. She ducked into a supply closet and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, typing a message to a contact Gregory had quietly given her days ago. "Red dress woman just got instructions from Clarissa. She's heading to floor 42. She hit send. Seconds later, she received a reply. "Thank you. Stay put. Don't confront." Upstairs, Caleb moved quickly, keycard in hand. Floor 42 was reserved for VIP Suitesa place for rest, private calls, or setups. Tobias was already there, standing just outside room 421. "She's in there," he whispered. "Alone. Cameras live. Everything's prepped. If Marcus tries to bring you in, I let him." Caleb stepped back into the shadows as Marcus exited the elevator moments later, glancing over his shoulder. He had a key, one clearly not registered under his name. He entered the room without knocking. "C'est compast." Then Caleb moved. He opened the door swiftly, catching Marcus and the red-dressed woman in mid-conversation. The woman looked startled. "Marcus?" Momentarily speechless. "Caleb, what the hell?" Caleb raised a hand. "Save it. I know exactly what this is." From the hallway, Tobias stepped in holding a tablet. On the screen, footage of Marcus pouring liquid into a glass 2 nights ago, clear as day, and Clarissa handing the woman that envelope earlier tonight. "You were setting me up," Caleb said, voice even. "Drug me. Stage a scene. Leak it to the press." Marcus paled. "You've got it all wrong. You used my trust, my home, my staff." His voice tightened. "And you would have destroyed me if not for one person who saw through it." Downstairs, Maya watched from behind the bar as Clarissa's phone buzzed. A reporter she'd planted was calling. But Clarissa never picked up. Security was already moving. By the time the night ended, Clarissa and Marcus were both escorted from the building under quiet but firm direction. No cameras caught it. No headlines the next morning. Caleb made sure of that. He believed in justice, but not in public humiliation, not unless necessary. Back in his office the next morning, Caleb sat alone until the door creaked open. It was Maya. "I got your note," she said softly. "You said to come." Caleb stood. "You saved me, Maya, twice, and I never thanked you properly." "You don't have to." "I do," he said, "because you did what no one else did. You saw something, and you acted." She lowered her gaze. "I just didn't want to see someone good get ruined." He stepped closer. "Would you ever consider working here full-time? Not as a server. Something more meaningful. Something permanent." Her eyes lifted, hope flickering in their depths. "I'd like that," she whispered. He smiled. So did she. Maya stood on the edge of the conference room, her back straight, eyes focused, dressed now not in her event staff uniform but in a smart navy blue blouse and tailored slacks. The Sloan Dynamics emblem was stitched discreetly above her chest pocket, a badge of new beginnings. Her ID badge read, Maya William, Special Assistant, Executive Integrity. A week had passed since the gala, since the night she stepped out of the shadows and into Caleb Sloan's trust. A lot had changed since then. She now had an office with a view, an email address bearing her name. But more than that, she had a voice. And today, she would use it. Inside the room, Caleb sat at the head of the table, flanked by Gregory on his right and Marlene Dillard, head of legal, on his left. Across from them were two men in tailored suits, rigid and cautious, internal auditors from the firm's compliance committee. The investigation into Marcus Hale and Clarissa Northwood had formally begun. Maya stepped forward, a slim file clutched in her hands. "I've compiled the communications logs between Marcus and the press contacts he attempted to leak the footage to," she said, her voice steady, more assured than ever before. "He used a personal burner device, but cross-referenced timestamps and access logs from the company VPN placed him in the executive suite during both the attempted leak and the substance tampering incident." Gregory nodded with quiet pride, while Caleb gestured toward the file. "Please add that to the record." The auditors exchanged glances before one spoke. "Mr. Sloan, may we ask why your assistant was involved in gathering evidence? This isn't standard protocol." Caleb's gaze sharpened. "Because she saw what none of us did, and because she was the only one in this company who didn't turn away when something felt wrong. If you're concerned about protocol, I suggest you revisit your own guidelines on integrity." The room went quiet. Maya sat, her hands folding neatly in her lap. The tension didn't rattle her. Not anymore. Later that afternoon, Maya took a walk through the quiet rooftop garden on the 26th floor. The city below bustled with its usual rhythm, but up here, time slowed. The roses were in bloom, lavender creeping up the side trellises, and the gentle wind carried the scent of eucalyptus and something older memory, maybe. She found Caleb already sitting on one of the benches, a worn leather folder in his lap. He didn't look up immediately when she approached. "I heard how you handled the auditors," he said eventually, flipping the folder shut. "You didn't flinch." She smiled faintly. "I've flinched enough for one lifetime." He looked at her then, eyes softer than usual. "You remind me of someone." "Your daughter?" she asked gently. He paused. Someone from long before, back when I was barely building this company. A janitor named Otis, who used to come in early just to make sure the floor was spotless for our first clients. Never spoke much, but he had this way of looking at people, like he could see through the polish, through the lies. Maya didn't say anything. She just listened. He died before any of this got big, before Sloan Dynamics meant anything to anyone. But I think about him sometimes when people talk about value. There was a moment of silence. Then Caleb looked at her again. "You're not here because you saved me, Maya. You're here because you remind me that decency still exists, that truth still has defenders." Her throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. Back in her office that evening, Maya reviewed a batch of flagged emails that Gregory had asked her to examine. With Clarissa and Marcus gone, there was a wide vacuum in executive operations. But that vacuum had also stirred up other things, files long ignored, relationships previously hidden. She opened one particularly cryptic thread titled, Project Starcrest. Inactive? The sender? Clarissa. The recipient? A private number with no domain. She scanned quickly. There were references to off-site warehousing, non-compliant data logs, and a strange set of coordinates. Maya frowned and copied the data to a secure folder. Then she forwarded it straight to Caleb. A ping came through seconds later. From Caleb Sloan. Subject: urgent. Message: can you meet me in the old West Wing server room in 15 minutes? Don't tell anyone else. Her heart ticked faster. She grabbed her jacket. The West Wing had been mostly dormant for years. Since the company expanded into newer towers, the original server corridorance, the brain of Sloan Dynamics, was left to flickering monitors and half-powered fans. Maya arrived to find Caleb already there, flashlight in hand. "Do you know what these coordinates are?" he asked without greeting, holding out a printout. She nodded. "They match a decommissioned storage facility in Redmond." "I thought so too," Caleb muttered, walking past a row of quiet consoles. "Except this section," he pointed at a blinking blue light, "was supposed to be shut down. No power, no activity." He tapped a key. The screen flickered. Lines of data appeared, not just server logs, employee footage, archived surveillance, correspondences marked confidential. Maya gasped as one folder opened and revealed time-stamped image screenshots from inside Caleb's private residence. Some from years ago, others from just last month. They were spying on you," she said, her voice low. "Not just me," he said darkly. "Anyone in my circle." Suddenly, a sharp sound rang out behind them. Footsteps. Quick, heavy. Caleb turned off the screen, motioned for Maya to get down. But the door creaked open and Gregory's familiar silhouette stepped through. He raised both hands. "It's me," Caleb exhaled. "How did you?" "I saw the logs too," Gregory said. "And I remembered something Marcus once said, about safes. I thought I should check here." The three of them exchanged looks. Maya spoke first. "Whatever Project Starcrest is, it wasn't just a smear campaign. It was surveillance, possibly blackmail." Gregory nodded. "We need a full digital sweep. Every terminal, every executive login for the past 5 years." Caleb looked toward the dark screen, then back at Maya. "You in?" She gave a slow, resolute nod. "Always." That night, back in her apartment, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, her thoughts spiraling. She looked at the photo frame on her nightstand, her mother and sister signing "I love you" at her high school graduation. "You told me to stay true," she whispered. "And I'm trying." She closed her eyes. The city outside didn't stop moving, but in a quiet corner of that world, something had shifted. And justice, for once, was no longer silent. The next morning, Maya stood in the dim hallway outside Gregory's office, her fingers lightly tapping the data stick in her coat pocket. It had taken her all night to decrypt the second half of the Project Starcrest folder file after file of unauthorized footage, manipulated images, forged documents. But one file stood out from the rest. A video clip, no longer than 20 seconds, recorded via hidden camera. In it, a woman Clarissa's seen slipping a vial of something into a glass. The timestamp matched the night of the gala. The drink, Caleb's. Gregory's door opened before she knocked. "You look like you haven't slept," he said. "I didn't." She handed him the drive. "This is what they didn't want you to see." Gregory plugged it in. His face, usually calm and reserved, slowly paled as the video played. Then came the still images: Clarissa meeting with Marcus behind closed doors, an envelope exchanged, a list of journalists' names. "She really did it," Gregory whispered. "She tried to drug him, and Marcus was going to stage it," Maya said quietly. "He had a woman planted in the hotel suite. If Caleb hadn't dropped the glass when I shouted," Gregory nodded grimly, "he would have woken up with no memory, next to someone who'd swear he cheated on Evelyn, and the tabloids would have eaten it alive." Maya folded her arms. Marcus didn't just want to embarrass him. He wanted to ruin his credibility. Everything built around Caleb's ethics and loyalty would have collapsed, Gregory finished. And with it, Sloan Dynamics. He shut the laptop. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Gregory looked up. "You ready to present this to him?" Maya didn't answer. She just reached for the file and walked out, heels clicking softly on the marble floor. In the boardroom, Caleb Sloan sat at the far end of the polished oak table, his brow furrowed, fingers steepled. Behind him, the skyline of Seattle stretched wide and gray, clouds dragging over the water like slow ghosts. Maya entered with Gregory and nodded once. "Show me," Caleb said simply. Gregory plugged in the drive, and the footage played on the large screen. Caleb watched in silence, his jaw tightening with each second. When the clip ended, he leaned back. The quiet stretched long. "Clarissa," he said finally, almost to himself. "Of all people." Maya took a step forward. She knew exactly how to hide in plain sight. Charm, poise, loyalty. She used it like a mask. Caleb stood. He walked to the window and placed one hand on the glass. Marcus wanted this company for himself. Clarissa wanted. What? Revenge? Power? Or just the thrill of pulling strings? Gregory cleared his throat. "There's more." Maya traced the contact chain from the journalist Marcus tried to call. Turns out, the man's already being investigated for planting false scandals tied to corporate rivalries. This wasn't just internal sabotage. Someone might have paid for this. Caleb turned, eyes sharper now. "We'll dig into it. But first, we release a statement. Transparent, precise. Clarissa and Marcus are terminated permanently, and we disclose everything about the attempted manipulation." Maya hesitated. "Won't that damage Sloan dynamics? Make you look vulnerable?" "I'd rather be vulnerable than complicit," Caleb said firmly. "The moment we start hiding truths, we become them." Maya swallowed a surge of emotion. It was the same tone her mother once used when she stood up to a landlord who tried to evict them in the dead of winter. A tone of quiet fire. "We'll need proof," Gregory said. "Documents, testimonies." "I'll testify," Maya interrupted. "I was there. I saw the drink," I shouted. "That's why it didn't work. Let me be the voice that breaks the lie." Caleb looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. That evening, Maya sat before a recording camera in the media suite, a Sloan Dynamics logo faintly blurred behind her. She wore no makeup, no rehearsed lines, just her own steady voice, recounting everything she'd seen the hallway, the drink, Clarissa's reaction, the woman planted in the suite, and the look on Marcus's face when his plan failed. As the recording ended, the director looked up. That was powerful. Maya didn't smile. She just said, "Send it out." By morning, the video had gone viral. News anchors debated the ethics of whistleblowing in corporate leadership. Comment sections lit up with comments like, "That girl saved $1 billion company," and "She's the real executive of integrity." Some people said it felt like fiction, but for Maya William, it was just the truth. The following week, Maya found herself once again on the 26th floor garden, seated beside Caleb. A silence stretched between them, not awkward, but contemplative. "I watched your video twice," he said. "And then I watched it again." She turned to him, unsure of what to say. "You spoke like someone who'd seen the worst, but chose not to let it define her." Maya looked at her hands. "I used to think silence was safety, that if I kept my head down, no one could hurt me. And now? Now I know silence protects no one. It just gives people like Clarissa more room to operate." Caleb nodded, then pulled a small envelope from his coat. "What's this?" she asked. "Your new contract," he said. "Director of Ethics and Internal Oversight. Full benefits. Autonomy to build your own team." Maya blinked. "You're serious?" "I don't make offers I don't mean." She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a letter, signed by the board. And at the bottom, one more line written in Caleb's own pen. "Justice needs a seat at the table. This one is yours." The next day, Maya walked through the newly reassigned office floor. Glass doors bore fresh names, new leaders, promoted after the shakeup. People nodded to her in the hallway, not just with politeness, but with respect. She entered her new space. It wasn't large, but it had a window that looked toward the North Tower. She placed the framed photo of her mother and sister on the desk, right beside a plaque that read, "Maya William, Director of Ethics." A knock at the door. It was Gregory. "Got a minute?" "Always," she said, smiling. He stepped in and handed her another folder. "Something you should see. A new whistleblower just came forward about one of our satellite branches in Nevada. They want to talk to someone they trust." Maya looked down at the folder, then back at him. "Then let's make time." As he left, she leaned back in her chair and whispered, We're just getting started. Outside, the sun pierced the morning haze, and somewhere in the building's quiet bones, the echoes of silence were being replaced on truth at a time. Maya stood in the hallway outside the Nevada conference room, holding the whistleblower's file like it was a relic from a darker time. She had read it twice already every paragraph, every redacted line, but no amount of reading prepared her for what was about to happen inside. The glass door opened. A security officer nodded. "He's ready for you." She stepped into the quiet room. The man sitting at the end of the table wore a worn-out suit and clutched a crumpled handkerchief in his left hand. His name was Luis Mendoza, Internal Logistics Supervisor from the Sloan Dynamics Las Vegas branch, 58, former Marine. A man of structure, yet his eyes now held the weariness of someone who'd carried a truth for too long. "Mr. Mendoza," Maya greeted, taking the seat across from him. "I'm here to listen." He nodded slowly. "You're the one who exposed Clarissa and Marcus. I was part of it, but I'm more interested in what you have to say." He exhaled through his nose. It started small miscounted inventory reports, falsified expense sheets. At first, I thought it was just carelessness, but then the numbers started to repeat. The same gaps, the same routing codes. Like someone wanted certain shipments to disappear. What kind of shipments? High-value processors, military-grade tech. Maya's fingers stiffened. Was Caleb aware? Louis shook his head. "I don't think so. It was routed through our old Northern Ops team, some of whom were loyal to Marcus even after his dismissal." Maya leaned forward. "Are you saying this has continued after Marcus was terminated?" "I'm saying Marcus was just a piece. There are still people in the system who benefited from his schemes." Maya felt a familiar chill move through her. She had hoped taking down Marcus and Clarissa would root out the worst. But corruption, she was learning, had many faces and most didn't wear name badges. "I have documentation," Louis continued. "Email threads, serial mismatches. And there's one more thing." And he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small black notebook. Its pages were filled with codes and notes in tidy handwriting. "This is my record," he said. "Every time they overrode shipment tracking, every invoice number. It goes back 3 years." Maya opened the notebook. What she saw made her heart lurch. One entry was dated just 6 weeks ago, 3 weeks after Marcus was removed. "They didn't stop," she whispered. Louis's voice softened. "I didn't know who to trust, but then I saw your video, the way you spoke. I figured if I didn't come forward now, I never would." Maya closed the notebook carefully. "You did the right thing, Mr. Mendoza." She stood, her hand resting on the file. "We'll investigate every entry. You're not alone anymore." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "Neither are you." That evening, Maya sat across from Caleb in his private suite, the lights low, a jazz record playing softly in the background. She placed Louis's notebook and documents on the table. "It's worse than we thought." Caleb didn't speak for a long time. He poured a glass of water and stared into it like it held an answer. "I fired Marcus to stop a storm," he said finally. "Turns out, I only cut off one of the winds." Maya nodded. "There's a whole weather system underneath." Caleb flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. "They've been using outdated approval codes from my father's 10-year backdoor access that never got flagged. Because no one ever questioned it," Maya said. "Until now." He looked at her. "I'll call a full internal audit first thing tomorrow. Quietly, I want you to lead it." Maya blinked. "Me? You've already proven you see what others miss and you're not afraid to say what needs to be said." She looked at him. "This is going to rattle more than a few egos." "Then let it rattle." Caleb leaned forward. "The rot doesn't go away until you shine a light directly on it." The next morning, Maya convened a small team hand-picked, clean records, sharp minds. One by one, she outlined the task: confidential investigation into logistics, procurement, and outdated infrastructure vulnerabilities. They called it Project Sundown because it was time for the shadows to end. Days turned into weeks. The team uncovered falsified documents, ghost employees, untraceable vendor accounts. Some employees panicked and quit. Others cooperated anxious, angry, but honest. But the deeper they dug, the more one name kept reappearing in the metadata: Robert Trent. Trent was a senior procurement officer, long-standing, quiet, friendly, and completely under the radar. Maya brought it to Caleb. He was promoted just before Marcus's rise, she said. And somehow, he's never had a single red flag or complaint. Caleb exhaled. Because he was the flag, just dressed in a suit and steady numbers. They decided to bring him in. Robert Trent entered the room calmly, wearing a slate gray suit and polished shoes. His smile was mild, his voice professional. Maya, Caleb, how can I assist? She didn't waste time. We've reviewed your authorization logs. You've signed off on $9.4 million in asset transfers with no physical delivery confirmation. Trent raised an eyebrow. Are you accusing me of theft? I'm stating facts, she said. You can clarify them. He chuckled softly. You're just like your video. Righteous, idealistic, dangerous. Caleb's tone hardened. We're past games, Robert. Trent stood. You don't understand, do you? This company has always had its hands in gray markets. Your father knew it. Marcus knew it. I simply made the process more efficient. Maya felt her jaw tighten. You're stealing from a company that's supposed to serve national defense. You're putting lives at risk. Trent leaned forward. And you think your little integrity crusade is going to change that? You'll drown in it. Caleb stood. You will. Trent was arrested within 24 hours. The press never got the full story, only that a senior officer had been terminated due to ethics violations. But inside Sloan Dynamics, the message was loud and clear. The old system was collapsing. And Maya? She was at the heart of its rebuilding. One evening, as Maya walked through the lobby, a cleaning woman stopped her. Miss William, she said shyly, I just wanted to say, my son works in IT, and he told me what you did. About Trent, about Marcus. He said, you saved the company. Maya smiled gently. Tell him thank you. But really, I just did what needed to be done. The woman nodded, then hesitated. My husband. He passed last year. Cancer. I wanted to give up everything. But your story made me feel like maybe there's still good out there. Maya's eyes softened. There is, but sometimes, it takes someone to speak it out loud. She walked out into the cool air, her heels clicking softly. She looked up at the towering building once full of silence, now full of voices. Voices that told the truth. Voices that refused to disappear. And above them all, hers. Steady, clear, unafraid. A soft breeze stirred the leaves outside Sloan Dynamics' main campus as Maya stepped into the elevator alone, rising steadily toward the executive level. The air felt different now, lighter, calmer. But beneath that surface calm ran a deeper current tune of unfinished business. Caleb had called a private meeting. No agenda, no assistants, just a time and a room. As the elevator dinged open, she stepped into a quiet hallway bathed in late afternoon light. The door to the meeting room was ajar. Come in, Caleb called gently, already seated by the window. Maya entered, her steps unhurried, measured. She had learned by now that pace mattered when walking into rooms like this. Power responded to presence. Caleb gestured toward the chair across from him. I wanted to talk before the board meets tomorrow. She nodded and sat, her hands folded loosely in her lap. You think there'll be resistance? Not from the majority, but there are still a few who liked the old ways. They'll be polite and dangerous. She tilted her head. Are you asking me to soften the language in my report? No, he said, then paused. I'm asking you to double down. Maya blinked. You want me to call them out publicly? He turned toward the window. We've been cleaning house from the inside, but tomorrow, we raise the blinds. Let the shareholders see what's been festering beneath the carpet. Her throat tightened. That's going to come with consequences. He looked at her then directly, without flinching. Only if we hesitate. She took a slow breath. Then let's not hesitate. The next morning, Maya stood before a room full of powerful people, executives, investors, department heads. Her voice was steady, her pulse quiet but persistent like a drumbeat beneath the surface of still water. She walked them through the timeline, the corruption, the cover-ups, the quiet betrayals inside procurement and logistics. Then she paused. I know many of you have worked here longer than I've been alive, she said. You've seen this company grow, fall, rise again. But loyalty to legacy must never outweigh loyalty to truth. Murmurs rippled across the room. One man near the back leaned into another and whispered something. Maya didn't flinch. Some will say exposing this makes us weak. I say hiding it made us weaker. But that ends now. Transparency isn't a threat. It's the only way forward. When she sat down, silence lingered for a moment. Then slowly one by one hands began to clap. First the younger executives, then the department leads, and finally, to her surprise, even one of the older board members stood and joined. After the meeting, Caleb approached her by the elevators. "I've never seen them respond like that," he said. "You didn't just speak the truth, you made them believe it." She exhaled. Let's hope belief turns into action. That weekend, Maya took a day off, her first real one in months. She found herself walking down the wooden pier near Marina del Rey, the salty air wrapping around her like an old coat. The sea stretched endlessly, gentle and vast. She sat at a bench near the end of the dock. A woman passed with 2 small dogs in tow. A fisherman nearby reeled in a catch. And beside her, unexpectedly, sat an older man with a kind face and silver hair tucked beneath a baseball cap. "Beautiful day," he said without turning. "It is," she agreed. "You look like someone who just finished something hard," he continued. She smiled softly. "How could you tell?" "Because I've been that someone too." She turned slightly. "What was your fight?" "Airline regulation," he said with a quiet laugh. 30 years ago, they told me whistleblowers don't fly far. But sometimes, truth has wings." They sat in silence for a while, the waves lapping beneath them. Then he asked, "Was it worth it?" She looked out at the water. "I think so. But there's still more to do." "There always is," he replied. "But you look like the kind of person who'll keep showing up." She smiled. "I hope so." The following week, Maya met with Caleb in the company garden. It had been newly reopened after years of neglect, now filled with wildflowers, native grasses, and a few benches nestled beneath young oak trees. Caleb was holding a letter in his hand. "It's from Clarissa," he said. "From jail." Maya's brows lifted slightly. "She says she's sorry," he continued. "But it's not remorse, it's strategy. She's angling for early release." "Will she get it?" "Doubtful," he said. "But it reminded men none of this is over. We fixed what we could. But people like her, they always try to come back." Maya looked down at the gravel path. "Then we keep watch." He smiled faintly. "You know, my father would have hated all this." "Because you chose transparency?" "Because I didn't keep it in the family." Maya's voice softened. "Sometimes, family is who shows up when it matters." Caleb nodded slowly. "You've shown up more than anyone." They stood in silence, the breeze rustling through the oak leaves above. Later that week, Maya received a letter herself. It was mailed to her work address, handwritten, sealed with a wax stamp. Inside was a folded photograph. She unfolded it carefully. It was the old janitor Earl Washington standing beside his son, Jamie. The boy was holding a certificate. Junior Developer, Sloan Systems Fellowship. On the back of the photo were 4 words. He found his place. Maya felt her throat catch. Her fingers gently brushed the edges of the paper. Jamie. She remembered the mop in his hand, the intelligence in his eyes, the way he had warned her that night in the server corridor. And no, he was no longer just someone's kid in the background. He was part of the future, a future that Maya had helped make possible. That night, she sat on her apartment balcony, the city lights glittering below. The file from Project Sundown was finally closed. The internal audits had been completed. The new ethics protocols were in place. But Maya knew her journey wasn't just about this company. It was about every quiet voice in every hallway. Every girl like her who had been overlooked. Every man like Earl who scrubbed floors but saw everything. Every boy like Jamie, who was more than what the world expected. She took out a fresh notepad, opened a new page. At the top she wrote, "What comes next?" And underneath it, a single line, "Speak even when you're scared." Because someone, somewhere, would hear it. And that was how the world changed, one voice at a time. Rain tapped gently against the windows of Sloan Tower as Maya stood once again in the executive boardroom. But this time, it wasn't for an investigation, an accusation, or a defense. It was a ceremony. The room, usually bathed in cool professionalism, had been softened with warm lighting and subtle decor, nothing overdone, but enough to mark the occasion. Caleb had insisted on it. "People need to see what change looks like," he'd said. "They need to feel it, not just read it in a report." Um, Maya stood beside a sleek podium. A modest crowd gathered before her. Senior leadership, junior staff, Earl and Jamie Washington in the front row, and even a few faces she hadn't seen since that chaotic week when everything had unraveled. Caleb stepped forward first, holding a small velvet box. "Today," he said, "we don't just recognize the end of a crisis. We mark the beginning of a culture rebuilt on trust. And that wouldn't have happened without the courage of one woman who started here as a contract server in the cafeteria, and who now rewrote the rules for what integrity looks like." He opened the box. Inside was a gold lapel pin in the shape of a flame, simple, elegant, because sometimes it only takes one steady light to reveal everything that was hidden. As Maya stepped up to receive it, she heard applause, but more than the sound, she felt its weight. It wasn't applause for a title. It was for the path she had walked. Every cracked tile she'd scrubbed as a teenager, every subtle insult she'd swallowed, every night she'd stayed late, chasing data no one believed mattered, and every choice she'd made not to give in or give up. She accepted the pin, then the microphone. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the steadiness of someone who no longer had to prove herself but still understood the need to keep speaking. "I used to think justice was something someone handed you," she said. "But now I know it's something you have to make. Every day. With your voice, with your work, with how you treat people when no one's watching." She paused, letting that settle. "This isn't about me. This is about all of us, the quiet ones, the ones who get dismissed, the ones who whisper the truth before anyone's ready to hear it." In the crowd, she saw Earl wipe his eye discreetly. "I didn't come here to become anything special. I came here to survive. But when you do that long enough, sometimes, you realize you've changed the room just by staying in it." Applause rose again, louder this time. Real, grounded, and Maya, for the first time in her life, didn't feel like an outsider in a place like this. She felt like she belonged. That evening, as the building emptied and the rain eased, Maya took the long route through the lower levels on her way out. She walked past the old janitor locker room, now refurbished and renamed the facility's support hub. The old mop sink had been replaced. The lights no longer flickered. She paused at the maintenance hallway where months earlier, Jamie had first pointed out the breach in the server room. That one act, that one brave moment, had changed everything. She found him upstairs a few minutes later, seated at a desk in the new intern lab, fingers flying across his keyboard. "You've got the command line open," she said. "Nice." He looked up, grinning. "I'm rebuilding the security shell. Your report said it needed another layer." She stepped closer. "You read my report?" "Twice," he said, shrugging like it wasn't a big deal. "I want to do what you do." She smiled gently. "Don't do what I do, Jamie. Do it better." His eyes shone a little at that. "Can I tell you something?" he said after a moment. "Always. I thought being smart would be enough. Then I realized being seen is harder." Maya crouched beside his chair. "It is. But the best kind of power? It's not the loudest in the room. It's the one that listens before it speaks." He nodded. "You have that kind of power," she said. "And you used it. Never let anyone convince you that was small." Later that night, Maya returned to her small apartment overlooking the edge of downtown. She poured herself a cup of peppermint tea, sank into her favorite chair by the window, and opened her leather-bound journal. She wrote slowly, "Truth isn't a weapon. It's a key. But not everyone wants the door opened." She thought about Marcus how close he'd come to pulling it off. How rehearsed his betrayal had been. How polished. But in the end, it was never about being clever. It was about underestimating the right people. She remembered the moment Clarissa had looked at her in the corridor, after the plot had been exposed. That faint smirk slipping off her face when Maya whispered, "You should have picked a quieter target." There had been no drama, no screams, just facts, exposure, justice deserved not by spectacle, but by unshakable truth. A few weeks later, Maya visited her mother's old house on the outskirts of Pasadena. It was small, plain, and still smelled faintly of lavender and pine cleaner. She sat in the backyard, under the same tree she used to read under as a child. Her sister, June, brought out 2 glasses of iced tea. "Mom would have been proud of you," June said softly. "I hope so," Maya replied. "She always told us. Even the smallest voice has thunder when it speaks the truth." Maya laughed. She also said I had the most stubborn voice she'd ever heard. June clinked her glass gently against Maya's. Turns out that was a blessing. They sat together, watching the sunlight scatter through the branches. The world outside was still messy, still filled with people like Marcus, still filled with silence around injustice. But here in this moment it felt possible to believe that things could be better. One step at a time, one voice at a time. A month later, Maya returned to Sloan Tower not as a guest or an employee but as a guest speaker. The Sloan Leadership Academy had launched, and she'd been invited to open its very first seminar. She stood before a group of 20 young professionals, diverse, wide-eyed, eager, and she told them her story. Not the polished version, the real one. The long nights, the overlooked ideas, the stolen credit, the decision to speak up anyway. You don't change systems by yelling at them, she told them. You change them by outlasting them, outwitting them, and eventually, leading them. When the seminar ended, a young Latina woman approached her with tears in her eyes. I've been afraid to speak, she said. Afraid I'd lose everything. Maya gently touched her shoulder. Then speak when it matters most. Because that's when people are finally listening. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Maya stood alone at the rooftop terrace of Sloan Tower. She watched the lights flicker on across the city. Each one a story, a possibility. Behind her, the building hummed with quiet motion servers whirring, late-night teams typing, janitors polishing windows others would walk past without seeing. And in that space between the ordinary and the extraordinary, Maya smiled. She had walked through shadows, whispers, betrayals, and silence. And she had spoken, not because she wasn't afraid, but because someone needed to. Because the janitor was right. Because Jamie was right. Because her mother had been right. Justice doesn't shout. It shows up, every day, quiet, clear, unshakable. And when it does, it changes everything.